What you do expect from a real estate buyer consultation? Stick around, you're watching Fastlane Realty. So you have a meeting scheduled to see a prospective realtor. Here's what's to expect. We'll take you through a complete consult and hope to answer all of your questions you might be having. Typically when I accept a new buyer client, I like to sit down with them face to face and give them a buyer's consultation. I ask them information gathering questions so I fully understand what their wants and needs are, and also what their timeline looks like. I also go through the entire home buying process step by step and give them an update of where the market is right now, what it's currently doing in our area. I also have a buyer's questionnaire. I always have a buyer's questionnaire handy. Typically I run through all these items and I have a printout just so I don't forget anything. Typically what I will say is I'll be a real estate agent and I'll be representing you in the transaction. I also have a fiduciary relationship with you, which means it's essentially for me to have your best interests and intentions in mind. Now there are a lot of professionals involved in the real estate transaction. You have your seller's agent, you have your buyer's agent, there's your lender. If you're seeking financing for a loan, that person, the one who is actually qualifying you for the home mortgage and issuing you a new home mortgage. You're also going to have an appraiser go to the property just to make sure the home is actually worth what you're paying for it. Then there's the home inspector. Now home inspections are often optional, but they are highly recommended. I've never had a transaction where a buyer did not do a home inspection. So as a real estate agent, I'm kind of like the quarterback of this whole transaction. And my job is to communicate with all these different parts and coordinate different dates, inspections, and appraisals, and make sure everything gets done properly and timely. Let's talk about financing. Typically, you either pay cash for a home or you finance it through a home mortgage lender. The majority of my clients get a home mortgage. Now you can get a mortgage from a lender. What's really important in the lending process is having someone there that can walk you through the entire process, and this is why I recommend a local lender. Somebody that you can meet in person, drop off paperwork at their office if you need to. You can call them and they are actually in the same time zone. Often you get a loan from a big bank. When this happens, they pass you off to a call center that's in another state, and you might be one of maybe, let's say, 200 transactions that lender is handling. I've had several bad experiences with these large lenders, so I would advise you using someone from the group of professionals that we use on a regular basis that provide quality work time and time again. The truth is, having a bad lender can absolutely kill an entire deal. I've seen it happen time and time again. I have several trusted professionals that I work with that are local here in Milford, Mass. Now I don't get any monetary kickback or anything like that just for using them, but there's a couple reasons why I like to use my trusted circle. They're all very reliable, they're very consistent, they've got great communication skills, and they're willing to work with my buyers and really hold their hand for the entire process if need be, from start to finish. I refer quite a few clients to my lender. We have a professional relationship, so it's in their best interest to give my clients the best service possible. They know that if they're late or if they're rude to one of my clients and they somehow don't follow up, they're going to jeopardize that relationship, and I may never send them any more clients again. It's just extra incentive to my preferred team that I use to provide the best service possible to my clients. Now, regardless of what lender you choose, you're going to be looking at information like your credit score, your credit history, your debt to income ratio, how much money you have saved up, how long you've been working at your job, your full job history. They're going to factor in all this information and they're going to issue you what's known as a pre-approval letter. Pre-approval letter may say, Mr. and Mrs. John Doe is pre-approved up to $400,000. We really need that letter before we can submit any offers on any properties. Typically, I don't like to show clients any property until they have their pre-approval in hand. I recommend that you reach out to your lender as soon as possible. I don't think it's ever too soon to reach out to a lender. There are times when a lender can help rebuild your credit. It's not uncommon to use a lender for months, all the way up to a couple of years before searching to make sure credit and debt-wise that you're set up for success before even searching for a home. You might be thinking, well, my credit's good and I've got some money saved up, but in consulting your lender, they say if you just pay down this debt and increase your credit score by, let's say, another 30 points, I'm able to reduce your interest rate by another 0.25% or so. Lenders can help serve you in a number of ways. There's also several types of loans that they can qualify you for. These loan programs have different requirements. VA loans require zero money down towards the mortgage. An FHA loan is another common one that typically requires about 3.5% down. Conventional loans are kind of that standard typical loan, and they range anywhere between mid-high twos these days all the way up to 5-6% depending on what time we're in. You also have your 203K loans. This is a rehab loan, so you'll be able to get money for the purchase of your property as well as money to hire contractors to make improvements on these loans, and the money for the contractor gets worked into your loan. Another type of loan is a USDA Rural Development Loan. This one's only eligible in certain areas. It's another zero down loan. You should be able to get 100% financing of your mortgage. So with all these different requirements for these loans, it's a really good idea to have a conversation with your lender. Let's talk about viewing homes. Clients typically look at anywhere between 5 and 10 properties before they find the one that they really want to buy. And I typically recommend looking at no more than 4 or 5 properties in one day. Any more than that and it becomes difficult to remember which property had which features. So if you need to go out on more than one, maybe 2 days to look at all the properties, that's not uncommon. Most of the research of these properties you can do online. You can go into Google Maps, you can see the aerial view, you can see the front facing view as well. I recommend is that you actually do a drive-by of the property. You're gonna get a list from me at some point and it may have 30 homes, for example. You might say, wow, those all look great. But once you actually start driving by these homes and seeing the neighborhoods, you might quickly realize, hey, I didn't know this house was right next to a highway, or I didn't know this house was next to a school. Look at these neighbors and can quickly eliminate many of these properties. I also recommend that you do the same thing with the neighborhoods that you're scouting as well. Maybe it's a great house, but not in a great neighborhood. This will save you both time for you and for me. From scheduling showings and going inside the house, try to eliminate as many of these potential homes as you can before you send me your final list of properties. If you do find a home that you're interested in, make sure you contact me first. As your buyer's agent, it's my job to communicate with the listing agent to get all the information that you need. I also like setting up my clients on an automatic daily property search. All I need is their criteria, what the price range is, what area they're looking for. I'll set them up on a property search, local MLS service. Every day you'll get an automatic email of properties that meet your criteria. Alternatively, you're looking for a property in a specific school zone or maybe in a specific style house. I can also set it up so as soon as a property comes on the market and meets your criteria, at that exact moment, you'll get instant email notification. This is actually really powerful because you'll be one of the very first people to know about a new listing that just hit the market. I want to point out that these listings that you'll be receiving by email, this information is the most accurate information that you can find out there. Sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, unfortunately, they're not as accurate. They're not the most accurate sites. For example, when I updated one of my listings that just sold, I checked it out on Zillow and Redfin, and it takes 3, 4, sometimes 5 days before it actually shows up that it was sold on their website. These properties I'm sending you come directly from our state's multiple listing service, the MLS. It's the most accurate information you can find on the properties. Finding a home is really a process of elimination. You're gonna search and you're gonna go see that there's 100 homes in the area that kind of meet your criteria. Your job is really just to start eliminating and evaluating these homes and really narrowing down maybe to a handful of homes or so. Also, you never really find 100% perfect home. It just doesn't exist. You can find a 70%, an 80%, a 90% perfect home. That's a real win. If you do see a specific property that you're interested in, I would ask you for about 24 hours notice to give me time to schedule that showing with the property's listing agent. In order for me to schedule a showing, I need to go on my computer, get all the information about that property as I can, submit a request to schedule a showing. That request gets zapped over to the listing agent, who then sends it to the seller. The seller has to then approve that showing, which then goes back to the listing agent and then back to me. It takes a little bit of time to get that done. Now, there are sellers out there that will not accept any showings unless you give them 24 hours advance. I can definitely understand and sympathize with them, with their perspective. I don't want to be sitting down for dinner and then get a request to show that property 30 minutes later and then have to pack up abruptly. They want to be able to plan around their day, leaving the house so that you can come in and view their property, take a look, with it completely vacant. Now, let's say you found the perfect house. You're absolutely in love with it and meets 90% of all your criteria. Now you want to put an offer in on it. So one thing that a lot of my clients typically are a little surprised about is an actual offer on a home is actually quite a few pages of legal documents. And again, this could take up to a few hours to prepare. Generally, I will gather quite a bit of information after the home showing if it goes really well. These documents would include the plot plan, tax assessor records, the deed, copy of the official MLS listing, and the documents that are attached. I'll also get a copy of the pre-approval letter, signed buyer agency agreement, public tax records, and recent comps. When sending an offer check is also included in the offer packet. Some housekeeping. I'm a Massachusetts realtor. I put out content all about the local area and all things real estate. If you're interested in either one of these subjects, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay current on my latest videos. Now let's talk about closing costs. Some buyers are unaware of what closing costs are exactly. These costs generally are various taxes and fees from the state and the title company that the buyer and seller have to pay to actually facilitate the transaction. Now, sellers on average are paying about 6% of the purchase price and seller closing costs. A buyer is typically responsible between 2 and 3% of their purchase price in closing costs. So even though your loan program might say 100% financing or 0 down towards your loan, you're still responsible for the buyer's portion of the closing cost, which again is specifically between around 2 and 3% of the purchase price. Many times these costs are often chosen to be rolled into your financing. You can also negotiate with the seller to have them pay off your closing costs, but this requires more money down on the offer for the house to accomplish this. So you can go either which way. When we submit our offer, we need to submit it with what's known as earnest money deposit. This is a good faith down payment towards the purchase of the property, and this is going to be held by a third party called an escrow company. Say for whatever reason you back out of the contract, or you need to break the contract, the escrow company is instructed to give that money to the seller. And if you think about it, if you didn't have this money involved, the buyer could back out of a contract at any time with 0 consequences. Generally, the earnest money deposits typically around 1% of the purchase price, or around about $1,000. However, there is some flexibility. Now you need to actually write a physical check for the amount made to the escrow company, and we take a picture of it and submit that picture of the check with your offer. If the offer is accepted, you then need to mail that check to the escrow company. At this point, congratulations, you have a home under contract. Homes are typically under contract between 30 and 45 days. That's about how long the transaction takes before you can close on the property. There are 3 ways to back out of a contract and you get your earnest money deposit returned back to you. Number 1 is the home inspection contingency. You're going to want to do a home inspection of the property. If you find any large issues with the property, such as wood rot or termites or mold, you can request the seller compensate you. Generally, in home inspections, you want to keep the request down to health, safety, and structural. Paint color is an issue I would not advise to press on, especially if the property is one that you're really in love with. A seller can compensate you by either lowering the price, giving you cash back, or they can pay to have that issue remedied. If we submit a request and they decline our request or counter back, you are now able to back out of the contract and get a full refund of all earnest money. If you do have concerns, if you find something really wrong with the property like wood rot, termites, stuff that we discussed before, you can back out of the contract during this phase and get all your money back. However, you will be out of the money that you have spent on the home inspector. Another is a financial contingency. Say for whatever reason you don't qualify for the mortgage. Say you lose your job during this time period, you can get out of the contract that way and get your earnest money deposit returned. At some point, your lender is going to order an appraisal of that property. They're going to send an appraiser to the property, and he or she is going to have to give us an estimate of how much they believe the property is worth. Most of the time, the appraisers are flexible and they work with you, but occasionally you do get a home that's appraised below what we actually have it under contract for. So at that point, can't go forward unless we renegotiate the terms. Let's say it appraises by under $10,000. We can request the seller bring down the sales price by $10,000. However, they don't necessarily have to do this. You can bring your own $10,000 to the table to make up the difference. Third option would be to meet somewhere in the middle. Perhaps the seller can come with $5,000 and you can bring $5,000 to the closing table, and at this point, you have the home under contract. You've passed the inspection phase, you have passed the appraisal phase, and now it's the day before closing. Now we're going to do what's known as a final walkthrough. I usually do this a day before or the day of closing. It's just a final short walkthrough of the property, not an inspection. We're just making sure that if they agreed to leave it any appliances or anything else, those items are still in the home. The closing is where you actually sit down and sign a mountain of documents to assign the home to its new owner. The buyers will have to sign a mountain of documents to accept that the home is in their name. It is important that you bring a photo ID to closing. And if you have to bring any money to closing, just make sure it's a certified check. You can actually wire transfer ahead of time the funds to the title company if you wish. Closing generally occurs during business hours, Monday through Friday between 9 and 5. I also really want to point out a point of warning for potential wire fraud. What I recommend is if the title company sends you an email with wiring instructions, what to do is call the title escrow company and say, I just want to confirm that you sent this email and that I fully understand these instructions that you're sending me. So now after closing, you fully own the home. This is when any home warranties will start. And this is when you want a lot of your utilities to begin. This is where you're handed the keys to your new property. As far as utilities go, if your home is on public water, that'll automatically get transferred into your name. But utilities like electricity, you will have to call up and have that transferred into your name. Ideally, you have all your utilities lined up to get transferred to your name on this closing date. A few things to point out with my business: I'm your buyer's agent. So once I get a home under contract, I fully negotiate the price, and I'm the person that coordinates with all the parties involved and make sure we have good communication between everyone. I'm heavily involved every step of the way. I'm not an a la carte service center. I am the point man from beginning to end and beyond. Lastly, let's talk about market condition here in Mass. So currently we're in what's known as the seller's market. So we have far more buyers than we do sellers. We have severe lack of inventory in the market right now. And what you're seeing is that days on market are typically pretty short. Not uncommon for homes that sell within the first 2 or 3 weeks. There are a lot of above asking price offers on homes, so if you're thinking about putting a lower offer and someone else comes in with a full price offer above asking price, they'll get that home under contract before you. It's that simple. This is especially a higher risk with properties that were just listed recently versus having a home that's been on the market for a few months, say 6 months. This might not be as much of a risk. Currently in Mass, the average is that homes are selling above 100% of the list price. So if you do want to put a below asking offer price in, I'd recommend that you reconsider your offer. We're seeing 20 to 30K above asking price currently, so it's important to keep that in mind. I hope we covered a lot of the questions you might have had and that you feel much more comfortable and confident about this whole home buying process. After the consult, you can now decide if this is the agent that you would like to represent you. Typically, you might sign an agreement for a specific amount of time that you have hired them to be your agent for. Now they can get to work for you. In this next video, we discussed what to expect in a listing presentation. I'll see you in the next one.